Amid the ruins of the hospital, the atmosphere shifted. The air was thick with the smell of decay and remnants of forgotten lives. They busied themselves with barricading the entrance, quickly pushing furniture and debris against the doors to hold back the oncoming tide. Upstairs, Fisher commanded, urgency lacing his voice. We need to find a vantage point. The soldiers moved efficiently, instinctively knowing their roles. They climbed the stairwell in hushed haste, the boy nestled between them, safe for now but still on edge. Fisher felt an electrical current of tension coursing through the air as they reached the second floor, a room with broken windows overlooking the street below. "Get down," he whispered, crouching low to peer through the glass, watching the chaos unfold outside. Shadows flitted back and forth, insurgents still searching, still pursuing. "Do you think they'll find us?" The boy's voice trembled beside him. Fisher turned to meet his gaze, forcing a calmness he didn't quite feel. "Not if we stay quiet and stay smart," he replied. "We're tougher than they think." Hours felt like days as the insurgents searched for signs of life, their voices a menacing drone as they prowled below. Fisher's heart raced with every footstep, each moment stretching painfully thin. He kept watch, the soldiers clustered behind him, each one filled with a mixture of anxious determination. "We can't stay here forever," one soldier murmured, scanning the street through the cracked glass as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky a bruised purple. Fisher nodded grimly. "We need to wait for them to disperse, but then we'll have to move again. Hopefully, we can find a way out." Just then, a shout rang out from below, unexpected and sharp. "Over here." "I saw them go in." Fisher's heart dropped as his body tensed. The search wouldn't stop. "Not now." "Everyone, grab weapons and prepare for a fight," he barked, adrenaline surging as he scanned for anything to help barricade their position. The boy's face paled, and Fisher crouched beside him, cooping his face with concerned urgency. "Listen to me, whatever happens, stay low and stay close to Rex, okay? He'll protect you." Trembling, the boy nodded, eyes wide with unspoken fear, but there was fire in his gaze, an unwillingness to crumble under duress, and Fisher felt a flicker of hope at that spark. The soldiers took their positions, rifles raised, hearts thundering in unison as the footsteps grew louder below, the shadow of doom threatening to swallow them whole. Fisher steeled himself at the window, watching through the filthy glass as the insurgents prepared for a final push. As the door blew open and chaos erupted, the soldiers held their ground, firing with precision and purpose. Fisher moved fluidly, instinct guiding his own aim with cold clarity. It was fight or flight, and they had made their choice. The fight raged around them, intensity fueling every decision as they exchanged fire with their adversaries. Each soldier moved as one, protecting their own as they maneuvered to maintain their ground. Fisher glanced at the boy behind him, who stood alongside Rex, the picture of innocence overshadowed by the bitter reality of war. The confrontation intensified, chaotic and frenetic as the insurgents breached the room. Fisher's world narrowed. There was no space for fear, only an instinctual necessity to protect this child and his team. But then, just as the dust settled and the tide of battle shifted, a louder explosion, a distant rumble, shocked the very foundations of the building. The walls trembled and Fisher stumbled, surprise flickering through him. "Get back," he shouted as pieces of debris began to rain down. "Move. Out. We need to get out," one soldier yelled as they maneuvered through the chaos, grabbing the boy's hand and pushing him toward an exit. They stumbled through the chaos, the very structure shifting like it might collapse. Adrenaline surged in waves as they raced down the staircase, Fisher leading the charge, their instincts guiding them as they wove through the wreckage again. "Get out. Move," he yelled, urgency rising as they sprinted toward an exit, scrambling for safety. Just as they burst through the door into the open air, bodies colliding in the frenzy of escape, another explosion sounded nearby, sending a shockwave that knocked them off their feet. Scrambling to regain composure, Fisher urged the boy to his feet. "We need to get clear." Adrenaline surged in Fisher's veins as they broke into the street, chaos swirling around them, flames licking at the air, shadows of danger darting past. There was a brief moment of stillness, a surreal sense of chaos frozen in time, as they attempted to regain their bearings. Fisher scanned the streets and caught sight of a glimmer off in the distance, movement, but also a sliver of hope. "That way," he shouted, pointing toward a bank of trees slightly beyond the crumbling expanse. "Head for the tree." They took off, hearts pounding as they raced through the remnants of destruction, shadows of insurgents on their heels. Fisher felt a surge of determination. They had pushed through so much already, fought with every breath. They were closer than ever now. Hope loomed like a beacon. Fisher's heart raced. He urged the boy to keep going, pushing through the twisting underbrush. "Keep moving. Don't stop." But as they reached the cover of the trees, the ground trembled beneath them, and Fisher felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. Salvation or destruction lay ahead, a bitter end to a long, harrowing journey. They weaved through the trees, breaths heavy, hearts racing, as Fisher stole a glance back at the chaos they had narrowly escaped. The insurgents were in hot pursuit, fury burning bright in their eyes, a primal beast driven by rage. But suddenly the cacophony of gunfire turned chaotic, echoing shouts of confusion rising in the distance. A new force had arrived, urgent shouts piercing through the chaos like a lifeline. There, beyond the thicket, uniformed figures began to emerge, reinforcements, allies coming to their aid. Fisher's heart raced, a rush of relief slamming into him like a wave. They were not alone. "Over here," one of the soldiers shouted, beckoning them closer. Fisher grabbed the boy's hand tightly, pulling him alongside as they sprinted toward the sounds of support. Their allies moved swiftly, engaging the insurgents with renewed fervor, keeping their attention drawn away from Fisher and the boy. Relief washed over him as they neared safety, dodging past trees and undergrowth toward the welcoming hands of the approaching squad. Just as they broke through the final line of trees into an open area where the reinforcements were rallying, Fisher turned back to see the insurgents begin to falter, their panic shifting as the cavalry arrived. Experience and instinct kicked in, and he knew the boy would be safe now. They had made it. Heart still racing, he felt the sudden weight of exhaustion settle upon him, each line of tension beginning to fade amidst the warmth of hope. Fisher turned to the boy beside him, eyes wild with shock, but gratitude blossoming there too. "We made it," he whispered, relief spilling forth as he surveyed the scene. Allies regrouping, strategizing, reclaiming ground. Against all odds, they had survived. And in that moment, together, amidst the chaos and remnants of destruction, Fisher and the boy shared a fleeting resemblance to normalcy, a whisper of triumph. They were alive. They were free for now. In the heart of the chaotic war zone, the air was thick with acrid smoke and the distant echoes of gunfire. Among the rubble and destruction stood a robust German shepherd, its tactical vest tightly fitted against its muscular frame. The dog, named Rex, was a key part of the special operations team, and as he stood slightly to the right of center, he appeared vigilant and ready, his gaze locked on an unseen threat. The soldiers, clad in camouflage uniforms, helmets, and face masks, stood resolute to Rex's left. They were a well-trained unit, their expressions serious and focused, each man holding his rifle with a steady grip. The shadows cast by the burning building behind them danced eerily across their faces, emphasizing the determination etched into their features. The flames licked hungrily at the night sky, turning the darkness into a charcoal canvas splattered with bursts of orange and yellow. One soldier, a corporal named Fisher, looked down at Rex, his brow furrowed in concentration. "You ready, boy?" he asked, his voice barely rising above the crackling flames. Rex responded with a low growl, his ears perked and tail taut, radiating an energy that suggested he could sense the tension that all humans had yet to acknowledge. Suddenly, a sharp crack split the air, a gunshot, and all the soldiers instinctively shifted, weapons raised and poised for action. Rex's eyes widened in alertness, instinct kicking in. This was the moment they had trained for, the silent call to arms that echoed through the unit. Each soldier was acutely aware that danger lurked just beyond the wall of smoke. Stay low, Fisher commanded, and the team moved seamlessly into position, crouching behind the cover of scattered debris. Rex, fine. A quick nod was all it took for the dog to launch into action, muscles rippling beneath his tactical vest as he bounded towards the source of the sound. The unit followed closely behind, hearts pounding as they navigated through the labyrinth of charred wood and twisted metal. Every crunch of the debris underfoot felt amplified in the fragile silence. Fisher's mind raced. They had received intel about insurgents operating in the area. Rex was their ace in the hole, a weapon dedicated to sniffing out threats lurking in the shadows. As Rex scanned the ruins, his nose working furiously, there was a clang in the distance, a door slamming shut. Fisher's heart sank. "Did you hear that?" he whispered urgently to his teammates. Nods answered him, eyes wide with understanding. The enemy was close, and the stakes had just risen exponentially. The team settled into a brief moment of tension-filled stillness. Around them, the flickering flames illuminated helicopters circling overhead, searching for enemy combatants, but revealing little in the thick, dark smoke. Fisher motioned for the team to spread out, forming a perimeter. Rex, meanwhile, had picked up speed, darting into a nearby opening leading into what remained of an old warehouse. The soldiers followed, adrenaline pumping through their veins, turning every sensory perception into a weapon of its own. But as they approached the opening, a sharp bark erupted from Rex, reverberating through the air like a warning bell. Fisher's heart pounded wildly. He was in tune with his dog's instincts, knowing they were the best detection system in the field. The dog's posture was tense, signaling that it had found something or someone. "Rex, stay," Fisher commanded, creeping closer with utmost caution. The team quickly fanned out behind him, weapons aiming steady at where Rex stood, fixated not on the rubble but toward a shadow that flickered just beyond the heap of broken materials to the right. "Clear," Fisher yelled, motioning with his hand for the others to advance cautiously. The tension hung thick in the air as each step felt heavier. It wasn't just a mission now. They were in pursuit of life or death, a dance on the edge of the knife. Suddenly, Rex let out another bark, this time more aggressive, as a faint whimper came from behind the debris. "What the?" one soldier murmured, confusion etched across his face. Fisher exchanged worried glances with his team. Was there a trapped enemy? An insurgent? Or was it something worse? Just then, the whimper sharpened into a cry, and Fisher felt a twist in his gut. That wasn't the sound of a combatant. It was the pleading voice of someone in pain, vulnerable in an unforgiving battlefield. Instinctively, he lowered his weapon, the protective instinct rising in his chest. "Hold your fire," he called out, heart racing. "It might be a civilian." The soldiers hesitated, glancing at each other, uncertainty mixed with the urgency of the moment. "How do we know it's not a trap?" whispered one of the team members. But Rex was already moving, drawn to the sound. Fisher couldn't let his dog go alone into the darkness. "We go as a team," he commanded, rallying the soldiers. "Cover me." They maneuvered closer, and as they broke through the last barrier of debris, the sight that met them was shocking. A small boy, no older than 8, crouched beneath the wreckage, the remnants of what was once a marketplace, now reduced to ash and ruin. His tear-streaked face was a mask of fear and confusion, surrounded by twisted metal and shattered dreams. Rex was the first to reach him, gently nudging the boy with his nose, offering warmth in a frozen world of despair. The boy's hands trembled as he reached out to the dog, seeking comfort in the chaos. "Stay back," Fisher ordered, keenly aware of the dangers of an unexpected encounter. But the boy only looked up, his innocent eyes reflecting back the flames that flickered nearby. "Help me, please," he whimpered, voice cracking. The team froze, the weight of the moment crashing over them like a wave. Fisher's gut twisted. This was one of those moments that defined who they were, soldiers tasked to protect, to serve. But here, right in front of him, stood a child caught in the crossfire of war, a testament to innocence shattered in a place where compassion often fell victim to fire. "Breathe, kid. We'll get you out," Fisher spoke gently, but the urgency grew thick in his throat. There was so much at stake, and every passing second counted. Get ready to move. But as he looked into the boy's eyes, where fear fought against a glimmer of hope, he felt a fierce resolve burning within him. This wasn't just about completing a mission, it was about choosing to stand for what was right, to sacrifice for someone who had already lost so much. Behind the rubble, another sound arose, a sudden shout, the echoes of more than one presence surrounding them. The air crackled with tension as they faced not just the imminent danger of the war zone, but the reality that they might not be alone. An ambush could be lurking, watching, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. Insurgents! Look alive! One of the soldiers shouted just as a shadow moved against the flames. Fisher's heart raced as he felt the weight of the decision bearing down upon his shoulders. To rescue the boy, they had to act fast, united and undeterred by the growing peril. With fire raging behind them and darkness creeping in all around, Fisher grasped the small boy's hand, determination illuminating his path. "On my count," he said, gaze sweeping over the team, heart pounding with urgency. Together, they huddled under Rex's watchful eye, readying themselves for a dare that could either lead them to victory or plunge them deeper into the grasp of war's chaos. Fisher's team followed, determined to navigate through the turmoil, but every corner turned revealed new dangers, shadows lurking around every turn. "This way!" Fisher shouted as they raced along, hearts pounding as they sprinted through the chaos towards safety. The narrow paths ahead weren't just hallways to freedom, they were the tightrope of life and death, each step a choice in a world crashing around them. The boys' grip on Fisher tightened, and they fled headlong into the unknown, each heartbeat synchronized in the desperate hope to find escape against all odds. But as they rounded a corner, a flash of movement caught Fisher's eye, a group of insurgents closing in on their position, rifles raised and intentions clear. It was not just a race against time anymore. They were outnumbered, and the urgency of the moment had transformed into a fight for survival, with all roads leading to a confrontation they hadn't anticipated. "Get down," he shouted, instinctively pulling the boy close as gunfire erupted around them, fear crackling through the air like a live wire. In that split second, the weight of the world settled heavily on Fisher's shoulders, the chaos of war closing in, and he realized they were far from safe. The fight was just beginning. As the bullets whizzed past, whistling through the air like angry hornets, Fisher's instincts kicked into overdrive. "Get to cover," he yelled, his voice barely reaching above the cacophony of chaos. With the sounds of gunfire echoing around them, he felt the boy tug at his arm, fear evident and raw. They darted behind a nearby barrier, a heap of rubble forming a makeshift shield. Heart pounding, Fisher pressed the boy against the cool concrete, shielding him with his body while the bullets thudded into the ground around them, sending shards of shattered debris flying. "Stay low," he whispered urgently, steeling himself against the panic rising in his throat. Rex, ever loyal, positioned himself protectively in front of the boy, growling low in his chest, a fierce guardian against the oncoming storm. The insurgents had flanked them, and Fisher realized they were trapped. He exchanged a glance with his soldiers, who were positioned together a few meters away, their faces grim and determined. "We need a plan," he whispered, eyes darting toward their adversaries, who were advancing with precision. "We can't stay here." "I counted at least 4 of them," one soldier replied, his voice steady but edged with adrenaline. "We can't go out shooting. We're outnumbered. We need to circle back to the last building." That was it. As Fisher's heart raced, details flitted through his mind like fireflies in the twilight. The layout of the shattered streets, the dilapidated structures. They could find a way. "Okay, on my signal, we move toward the alley on the left and head straight for the warehouse," Fisher instructed, catching the boy's terrified gaze. "We're going to get you home. I promise." He felt the boy nod, but the tremor in his small body told a different story. The sound of insurgent chatter grew louder, a language heavy with intent, slicing through the tension like a blade. Fisher knew they had precious little time. "Now," he shouted, feeling a surge of adrenaline propel him forward. He pushed the boy to the ground and sprinted towards the alley, Rex staying close at his side, a fierce protector ready for anything. One soldier covered their rear, firing at the approaching insurgents, while the others followed suit, fear melting into focus as they executed their plan. As they raced beyond the rubble, Fisher caught a glimpse of movement, a flash of something catching the dim light, maybe an enemy. He aimed his rifle instinctively, seeing nothing but shadows in the smoke. "Keep going," he urged, the weight of their situation pressing even heavier as bursts of gunfire forced them into a frantic pace. They reached the alley just as the gunfire erupted in earnest behind them. The sounds of their escape mingled with the chaos, and Fisher bravely led the way into the interface between survival and danger. The boy stumbled, but Fisher was quick to catch him, pressing a hand on his back to guide him along. Suddenly, an explosion roared from the vicinity they had just come from, sending a shockwave through the air. Fisher flinched, instinctively tightening his grip on the boy as debris rained down around them, dust and ash filling the air, mingling with the smoke of destruction. Just when they thought they were gaining ground, they emerged onto a broader street, their reprieve cut short. Ahead, an insurgent patrol spotted them. "There," one shouted, and Fisher's heart sank. "Run," he bellowed, pushing the boy ahead, adrenaline coursing through his veins as panic ignited around them. The soldiers moved as one, weaving through the shattered remnants of a war-torn area, ducking behind small barricades where they could find them. They were dangerously exposed, and Fisher could feel the heat of pursuit at their backs. "Fall back to that building," he shouted, pointing toward a dilapidated structure looming ghost-like in the haze. They surged forward, the threat of capture looming larger with each passing second. Just as Fisher reached the building, a bullet grazed his arm, knocking him off balance. He stumbled but quickly regained his footing, heart racing even faster. "Keep moving," he yelled at the boy, whose eyes were wide with terror. Finally, they ducked inside the building, crowded into a darkened entryway hangar. It was filled with dust and remnants of what once was a forgotten shelter amidst the chaos. "Hold this." Fisher quickly pressed his rifle into the boy's hands, desperate to ease the boy's terror and give him a tangible task. Just in case. Panic was palpable as they caught their breath, the soldiers checking their weapons and watching the door. Rex stood at attention, hackles raised, ever the sentinel. Fisher ripped the fabric of his shirt, tying a makeshift bandage around the wound on his arm. Pain throbbed, but focus remained sharp. They couldn't allow any distraction to derail their mission. The boy looked up, eyes wide and frightened yet curious. "Are we going to be okay?" he whispered, voice trembling. "Yeah," Fisher replied fervently. "We're okay." He forced a smile, even as fear knotted in his heart. "We just need to wait for the right moment. You're brave, kid. You've been doing great." Yet uncertainty crept in as they huddled in the hollow darkness. Outside, voices grew louder, insurgents shouting orders, searching for them. Fisher glanced at his squad, exchanging silent questions and questions without words. Would they find them here? How would they escape? Just then, one of the soldiers near the door held up a hand. "Listen," he commanded, and the group pressed closer, straining to pick up on the conversation outside. "I think they're planning a sweep," the soldier murmured, eyes flicking toward Fisher. "They'll be in here soon." Fisher's heart raced. "We can't stay. We can't wait for them to come to us." He looked at Rex, who stood poised and alert. "We need to find a way out now." With a sense of urgency thundering in their chests, they scoured the dark building for another exit. As they navigated the interior, Fisher's mind raced with possibilities. Each step could lead them towards salvation or further into danger. A broken window at the back of the room caught his eye. It was just big enough, but there was no guarantee it would be easy or safe. "There. We can use that to escape," he exclaimed, pointing the way. The soldiers nodded, rallying around Fisher's decision. "Keep the boy close and cover him, soldier," Fisher instructed, nodding to the team member closest to him. "I'll go first." The others nodded, and Fisher reached for the window. It was jagged and splintered, shards glittering like teeth, but there was no time to hesitate. He pulled himself through, gritting his teeth against the pain in his arm, and dropped silently to the ground below. Your turn, he urged the soldier helping the boy, who came through next, quickly followed by the others. The air was cooler outside, but danger was still thick, an electric pulse beneath their skin. They crept down the side of the building, inching toward cover behind another mound of debris. Keep an eye out. Any movement, Fisher commanded, glancing back toward the building they'd escaped from. The voices were growing louder, a patrol sweeping through and searching carefully. Rex moved swiftly, leading the boy as they pressed forward into the shadows. Adrenaline blurred the lines of fear and determination, propelling them onward despite the perilous nature of their situation. They navigated through the darkness, ducking low in the aim of avoiding detection. Just as they thought they reached the end of the path, a blinding light enveloped them as a spotlight swept far too close for comfort. Fisher's heart nearly stopped as the sound of footsteps echoed ominously. "Get down," he hissed, barely keeping his voice calm. They pressed against the cold ground, breath held and bodies tense, fear threading through them as they lay hidden. The soldiers behind Fisher exchanged nervous glances, but he knew they had to stay put, avoid detection at all costs. The light swept back and forth, illuminating the darkened shadows and grazing too close for comfort. They could hear muffled voices, the sound of men communicating as they prowled the area, searching for anyone who dared to cross their paths. Fisher felt the boy's slight frame shake beside him, the boy's breath warm against his ear. "It's gonna be okay," Fisher whispered as he felt a wild urge to comfort him, even as the air grew tighter around them. After an eternity of holding still, the spotlight continued its relentless search, but was eventually pulled away. The soldiers exchanged quick looks of concern. Hesitation flitted in the air. Fisher knew they couldn't shirk this opportunity. "Let's move," he commanded in a near whisper, rising from the ground with caution. They all crept forward, staying low as they dashed between the fleeting shadows, heartbeats racing as the danger still lingered. Out in the open, the remnants of the war lay prostrate around them, debris turned to mountains, barricades of memories steeped in trauma. Fisher felt time folding in on itself, paranoia seeping into his bones as they ducked around crumbled walls and shattered remnants of what had once been. Then an angry shout tore through the air, disrupting the fragile silence like thunder. "They're here." The realization landed like a weight in his gut. With their cover blown, survival instincts flared, and they took off, sprinting toward a group of dilapidated buildings that loomed ahead. Fisher felt the boy close again, both shield and anchor. He would protect him at all costs. "Keep running," he shouted, urgency seeping through every word as they launched themselves forward, each soldier moving as a unit, ready to face whatever lay in front of them. They pushed themselves, desperation coursing through every heartbeat as they fled into the fray, knowing that their time was running thin. Behind them, gunfire erupted once more, the sound sharp and definitive, drowning out the chaotic thoughts that surged through Fisher's mind. They were in the thick of it now, the mission clear yet uncertain, the stakes higher than ever. Emotions surged as they barreled forward, hearts racing, lives hanging precariously in the balance. Fisher led the pace, the fire of determination igniting a hope that refused to be extinguished, racing toward the unknown even amid impending darkness. Every heartbeat resonated with a singular purpose: to survive, to protect, and to find freedom from the war that sought to consume them whole. As they tore through the rubble-strewn street, the cacophony of gunfire trailing closely behind them, Fisher felt the weight of the world shift with every step. He dashed forward, urging the boy to keep pace, the sound of their footsteps echoing like a drumbeat against the chaos enveloping them. "Over there," a soldier shouted, pointing toward a narrow alley nestled between two decaying buildings. "We can cut through." Fisher nodded, adrenaline flooding his veins. "In," he bellowed, urging the boy and Rex ahead as he fell into step behind them. They plunged into the shadows of the alley, where the walls loomed overhead like ancient sentinels guarding their secrets, engulfing them in a momentary cocoon of solace amid the turmoil. For a breathless instant, they paused, leaning against the cold brick, their sides heaving in unison. Fisher stole a glance at the boy, who looked pale yet resolute, eyes wide with fear but flickering with the strength to endure. The soldier beside him kept watch, scanning for threats, while the others took a moment to regroup. "We need a plan," Fisher panted, sweat dampening his brow. "We can't just run blindly. We have to think this through. We need to find a safe zone, somewhere with a stronghold." Another soldier chimed in, voice taut with urgency. "If we can reach the old hospital, we'll have a better chance of holding out until backup arrives." The thought of returning deeper into enemy territory sent a ripple of apprehension through Fisher's chest, but he held the boy's gaze, willing strength to radiate from his being. "We can make it," he assured the group, clenching his teeth against the fear churning within. "If we move smartly, we can reach the hospital." The group shared loaded glances, nodding in agreement. They had little choice. The perception of safety was a fragile illusion in a world gone mad. Fisher took a deep breath to steady himself, clearing his head before speaking again. "Okay, here's the plan. We need to work together, keep to the shadows, and—" Suddenly, the sound of boots pounding against the ground echoed from their exit, and Fisher's heart sank. "They're coming," he shouted, urgency surging through him as he pressed the boy further into the wall. "Go now, go." Without hesitation, they bolted, racing through the narrow alley, fear propelling them onward. Fisher led the way, heart hammering against his ribs, Rex at his side, a steadfast ghost of loyalty urging them forward. As they burst into the street, the chaos of battle swirled around them like a storm. Fisher could see the distant shadows of insurgents converging, weapons at the ready, but there was no time to ponder their next move. They needed to cross to the abandoned hospital at the other end of the block. "Run," he yelled, sprinting toward a gap in the wreckage that separated them from a moment's reprieve. Gunfire erupted behind him, the crack of bullets striking the ground too close for comfort. They stumbled forward, weaving through debris, fear sharpening their reflexes in a deadly dance. With breath held and minds tuned to the pulse of their instincts, they waited, poised on the edge of destiny, for the moment to break free and find light amid the shadows. With breath held, Fisher felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him like the oppressive heat of the nearby flames. "On three," he murmured to the team, eyes flicking between the small boy and the encroaching shadows. 1, 2. The air was electric with tension as they readied themselves, instinctively gripping their rifles tighter. Rex sensed the urgency, shifting slightly closer to the boy, his presence a protective wall against the chaos surrounding them. 3. Fisher shouted, his voice slicing through the thick atmosphere, finding a strength he didn't know he possessed. Immediately, he and the soldiers surged forward, a collective rush fueled by adrenaline and determination. With Rex leading the charge, they dashed toward the boy, hearts pounding with every step. The ground trembled beneath them, echoing with the fallout from the burning building, but they pressed on, narrowly avoiding falling debris. "Stay with me," Fisher urged the boy, who stumbled but clung to the soldier's hand, his small fingers trembling with fear. The sense of urgency intensified as the sound of approaching footsteps echoed ominously around them, reinforcing the need to act fast. As they neared the crumbling entrance of the collapsed marketplace, the team split, creating a protective barrier around Fisher and the boy. Glancing over his shoulder, he noticed shadows moving against the smoke, figures darting in and out of view. "Over there," shouted one soldier, aiming his rifle toward a suspicious silhouette that flickered into the light of the flames. "We can't stop. Keep moving," Fisher barked, leading the boy toward a path that led deeper into the wreckage. With Rex guiding the way, they maneuvered through debris, adrenaline thrumming through their bodies like pulse fire. The boy stumbled but kept his grip firm on Fisher's hand, desperation igniting a flicker of strength in his fragile frame. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the air, a distant explosion reverberating like thunder, shaking the remnants of the structure around them. The ground quaked, sending a cloud of dust and soot swirling into the air, and Fisher felt the child jerk in fear. "Hold on tight," he shouted, urgency layering his voice as he pressed onward, ignoring the burning prickle of anxiety creeping up his spine. They pushed through another pile of debris when a flash of movement caught Fisher's eye. Two armed insurgents emerged from the shadows, their faces masked and rifles raised, eyes gleaming with aggression. "Get down!" Fisher yelled as he instinctively shoved the boy behind him, raising his weapon to confront the immediate threat. Rex growled deeply, a fierce warning that resonated through the chaos. One of the insurgents hesitated, throwing a quick glance at the dog, and that momentary lapse proved crucial. Fisher opened fire, his aim steady as he shot down the first assailant, the echo of gunfire swallowed by the roaring flames that surrounded them. "Move," he shouted to his squad, determination coursing through him. They dove into action, firing at the second insurgent, who was aiming at the group, the reality of their situation crystallizing in a heartbeat. The boy gasped, stifling a whimper as he watched the confrontation unfold, the chaotic dance of life and death raging before him. With the second insurgent neutralized, silence enveloped them in the aftermath of a thunderous storm. Fisher's heart raced, chest heaving as he glanced around. "We need to get to the other side of the building," he urged his team. "There's an escape route we can use." In the distance, the haunting sound of sirens grew closer, weaving through the chaos like a lifeline. The soldiers exchanged glances, a mutual understanding binding them together. They needed to move quickly before more enemies descended upon their position. Fisher knelt beside the boy, making sure he was all right. "Stay close to me and do exactly what I say," he instructed, meeting the boy's frightened eyes with fierce determination. "Can you do that?" The boy, his small frame trembling, but eyes full of resolve, nodded. "Okay," he whispered, determination creeping into his soft voice. "Good," Fisher said, a flash of pride igniting within him. With Rex by their side, they took off toward the back of the structure, navigating through the wreckage as the sirens continued to wail like banshees in the night. As they scuttled through the debris, Fisher felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Guilt for being thrust into a war that had no clear enemy, hope for the boy they were rescuing, and the heavy mantle of responsibility as team leader, the weight pressing down on him like a cloak of uncertainty. They had a mission, but now it was different, personal. Emerging from the rubble, they found themselves in a narrow alleyway flanked by half-collapsed buildings, leading to a dimly lit street beyond. The air hung heavy with the smell of smoke and danger, but it was a way forward. "Let's keep moving," Fisher urged, glancing over his shoulder. As they broke into a sprint, glancing back only to ensure Rex was still there, a sudden loud crack rang out, a warning shot from somewhere in the distance. Instinctively, the soldiers ducked, the weight of the moment intensifying. "We have to find cover," Fisher barked, spinning toward the shadows of a nearby storefront. "In here." He gestured as they rushed through a shattered doorway, eyes scanning for any sign of danger. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the remnants of broken furniture and debris. A few dim lights flickered above, the desolate scene. The boy pressed against Fisher's leg, clenching his fist in fear. "Stay close and don't make a sound," Fisher commanded, readying his weapon as he surveyed the interior. Outside, voices rose in urgency, insurgents filtering in as the sounds of chaos hardened into unmistakable threats. "They're looking for us," one soldier warned, breath quickening. "We can't stay here for long." Fisher nodded, focus sharpening. "We'll wait for them to pass, then we'll make a break for it," he planned, voice tempered by the gravity of their situation. Rising tension gripped the air, his heart racing with each footstep pounding outside. But as they waited, a chilling realization dawned on Fisher. What if they know the boy is here? What if they... He couldn't finish the thought. The boy's innocent eyes, reflecting fear but also resolve, sparked a fire within him. Around them, uncertainty weighed heavily, and the pressure crackled like an electric current. "Rex," Fisher whispered, and the dog pressed against him, sensing his unease. "We need to move soon." Just as he spoke, an explosion erupted in the distance, a deep, ground-shaking roar that rattled the very foundations of the building. And with that explosion came a surge of adrenaline, pushing Fisher's survival instincts to their limit. It was now or never. "Okay. On my mark, stay close," he commanded, adrenaline surging as he prepared to bolt for the exit. 1, 2, 3. They burst from the secluded safety of the office, Rex leading the charge, and the team navigating their way back toward the chaos of the outside world. The streets were wild, filled with the sounds of gunfire and the screams of those still caught in the crossfire.